president, at least publicly, seems to have reached one economically sane conclusion, that the federal debt is a pressing issue. Time and his action will tell if he actually believes that. Regardless, this has left many on the left worrying that the president is going to bring the axe to some entitlement spending. Is the creator of Obamacare really serious about cutting wealth transfer programs like Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid? Here to discuss are my freedom fighters, Fox Business senior correspondent and my buddy, Charlie Gasparino, the Agenda Project founder, Erica Payne, and Reason Magazine associate editor, Peter Suderman. Peter, to you first. Earlier today, the president said he wants to cut $4 trillion in spending over the next 12 years. Of course, what he didn't remind us is that he keeps borrowing about $1 trillion a year. How is that going to move the ball forward or fill up that $14.3 trillion abyss that we're all looking into?
Well, one of the things about the president's budget, about his proposal to cut $4 trillion, is that he actually uses a 12-year budgeting window rather than the 10-year budgeting window. So he's already starting in with the budget gimmicks. We saw this before with Obamacare. We've seen it time and time again from this administration, that whenever they propose to cut this or cut that, to cut some number, the reality is that they're not actually cutting what they say they're cutting. So what I suspect is that we're going to see the same thing here with more budget gimmicks, with more just sort of showy cuts that don't actually mean anything in the long run.
Under the guise of universal sacrifice, the president argued earlier today that he should be able to raise taxes on those earning more than either $200,000 or $250,000 a year. The same president who happily signed an extension of the Bush-era tax rates into law just 4 months ago. How does this rest with the business community? These are the people that create it.
I mean, it's really absurd, and I don't even think you even look at the business community. You also have to look at what happened in Washington State over the past year. Bill Gates Sr., the father of Bill Gates, the entrepreneur who created Microsoft,
right,
he proposed some sort of a millionaire's tax that started at $200,000 a year. This is in liberal Washington State. It was defeated. I really think the president is out of his mind proposing tax increases right now. The country wants to hear about cuts, not about taxing entrepreneurs. And by the way, if you make $250 in New York and you're a family, are you really rich?
No, you're barely scraping by. On Monday of this week, the first business day after the budget deal was reached at almost midnight on Friday night, Paul Krugman, who's the left's favorite economist, teaches at Princeton University and writes for the New York Times, ripped into the president for moving to the center.
Right.
Does the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party, to quote Howard Dean, think that the president is moving to the center? Stated differently, does he run the risk of alienating his base on the left with these moves?
I think the first 2 years of his presidency have alienated his base. You talked about the lame duck session tax cut.
Well, he rewarded the base with Obamacare, right?
Well, you know, the liberal base is okay with the health care bill, but let's keep in mind that over the last 30 years, the people who make more than $1 million a year have seen their tax rates go just down through the ceiling, while everybody else has paid more to support this country. And it's about time that ended.
What was his speech today then? More an effort to repair his relationship with the left-wing base than an effort to make the economy more stable?
No, listen, I think he's come out with what he thinks is a balanced approach, but the fact of the matter is a lot of his major financial supporters on the liberal side were mad during the lame duck session, and they're going to be mad if he doesn't push this tax hike now.
Do you really think a family of 4 in New York, in California, except for anywhere but the middle of nowhere, is rich? That makes $250,000 a year. Is that rich?
I think our concept of wealth is pretty skewed, and I will tell you this.
But is that rich?
I will tell you this. When people make more than $1 million a
year,
and they used to pay 91% taxes, do I think they should pay more right now? I absolutely do. You know what? The average wealth of this country, $50,000 a year, 20% unemployment. Do I think 250 is rich? It's a heck of a lot richer than somebody who's in the middle class.
Well, of course, but is that rich?
It doesn't matter if those people are rich.
What is the average?
It doesn't matter if people are rich
school
because
teacher
you
can make
cannot raise enough
$250.
revenue
Is that rich?
to close the budget gap.
Cops and school teachers are rich.
I want to ask you a question.
Cops and school teachers are rich.
Time out.
In this country make?
I'm just saying, are cops and school teachers in New York rich?
How much does the average family
Suderman, go ahead.
Only
$50,000.
Barack Obama considers
Only
Barack Obama
the debate over
considers
whether
$250,000
$250,000 classifies you as rich the debate over whether $250,000 classifies you as rich doesn't matter because you can't raise enough revenue from people making $250,000 and more to close the budget gap. I mean, Obama wants to spend 23, 24% of GDP. Right now, we're spending 18, 19% of GDP. So you're looking at collecting 20, 25% more revenue.
Got it.
You can't do that just by collecting taxes from the rich.
I want to switch gears because Paul Volcker, who was once the head of the Fed, warned yesterday in a speech in Stamford, Connecticut, much to my surprise, Charlie, the U.S. debt could reach a tipping point soon. The elder statesman of the big government central bank is not one for hyperbole. Will a warning from somebody like Volcker make the financial community and the people at the Fed open their eyes?
I think Paul Volcker lost a lot of credibility with the Dodd-Frank bill and this ridiculous rule that he threw in there that means almost nothing. It's called a Volcker rule. It's designed to reduce risk. It actually reduces the risk that didn't cause the financial crisis. Paul Volcker's a guy that would love to see taxes at 90%. So I really think he's yesterday's news.
You think that the federal government will start looking at the Federal Reserve differently and say the abyss really needs to be addressed, or do you want to address it by taxing rich people?
I think that both parties do a very bad job of being fiscally responsible. The debt went up doubled under George Bush, and it's gone up another 30% under Obama. Keep in mind, though, during World War II, we were at 100% GDP, and we had to do that to get out of the war we were in.
Got it.
We
Suderman,
basically underwent a war 2
on
years
Paul
ago.
Volcker saying we can't take on any more debt. Is he credible? Or if he is credible, will Ben Bernanke listen?
I think the first thing to say is that it's good news that someone like Volcker, who has some influence within the administration, as we know, is actually sounding the alarm on this. But the thing is, he's sounding the alarm that every other credible organization has been sounding, for a long time. The CBO, the IMF, they've been warning. Moody's has threatened to reduce, the credit rating for the United States. Everybody says that the debt trajectory is unsustainable. We have to do something about this, and I'm glad that folks that have influence within the administration are finally kind of getting the message.
Got it. Charlie Gasparino, Erica Payne, you guys can finish the fight in the hallway. Peter Suderman, thank you for joining us. Back with the plain truth on what Thomas Jefferson would think about the government today.